That was perfect. The minute it says that we're live on Facebook, just start talking about all your stuff on the wall.
Oh my goodness. Okay. When you said we're doing live, I didn't know you were really we were actually you were actually when you said live, you mean like live on Facebook and stuff like this.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Here
a
we
minute.
are.
Hold up, Robert. It'll be 1 second and it'll tell you we're live on Facebook. Just 1 second. I just have too many things to click. And then can't make any mistakes. Okay, 1 second.
So here's the other one.
Oh, loop de loop.
Let
I know.
me let me
Ridiculous. It's coming any second now.
oh gotcha.
We should be live. Okay, we're live, Robert.
Okay, uh this by the way shows you the incredible artifice of production and social media and stuff like this. Because when you, from what you're seeing right here, this is Robert George. He's got his nice shirt on, and he's got an interesting bookcase right behind him, which has a mix of my various interests. Like for example, Black History, because this is March, which is the graphic novel that was co-written by the late Congressman John Lewis. He
Wow.
wrote three of these graphic novels showing his life and the Civil Rights March and things like that before he passed away. Book I picked up literally on the streets of New York, Harlem on My Mind, Cultural Capital of Black America. But we've also got some other stuff too, apropos for what we're talking about here. Inside Comedy by David Steinberg, giving you some insights there. Judy Carter's book on stand up comedy is over there as well. And
Wow.
on my, I'm also this is also another graphic novel on the history of the Black Panther Party. So uh, kind of fun thing. Yeah, I'm a as I say in my stand-up act, I'm Catholic, I'm Catholic, I'm Black, I'm West Indian, I'm gay, and I'm Republican. But I think it's important. These books on Black history, including the radical movement of the Black Panther Party, are very interesting. Somebody else who was a kind of fan of the Black Panther Party that people don't know about, Clarence Thomas.
Wow.
Never
Wow.
know. Exactly. And then on my other shoulder, because I'll say my right shoulder, but it might be your left shoulder, depending on the way you're looking at it, is just various graphic novels and comic book related stuff that I've collected over the years. Let's see. This is the classic Batman, The Dark Knight over here.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, and bunch of bunch of others. The other the other Black Panther, the comic book version, not the actual group. And so yeah, so this, as I said, this is kind of the disguise part of it because you say, oh well, he's got these really well developed interests, and these are so well organized, and this is really great, and so forth. And you can't tell that the rest of the place is crap. All kinds of mess on my desk over here, stacked up thing there, dust buddies here, cockroaches getting ready to like attack me over here. It's a complete and total disaster. But just because this part here is nicely kind of organized and causes people to have interesting conversations about, oh, this guy is an interesting kind of a dude and has got it all together and so forth. If you only knew. So there you go.
Thank you. What a great way to get to know you. That was awesome. You guys, let me tell you who we got here for you. His name is Robert A. George, and I know him personally from being at the Gladys Simon Room, the Paul Hallisey Pangea show, and his shows he puts on at the Grizzly Pear Midtown. You've seen him all over, and we're going to find out what all over really means. Who knows how far he's done his comedy, and I always love it. He's daring, he goes political, he says what he thinks, and I just love him. He's unashamed of what he has to say, and people listen. So let me do the intro that he sent to me. I'm going to read it, you guys, because you don't want me doing anything by memory, really. Robert A. George is an independent journalist, comedian, and public speaker. He has been a columnist and member of the Bloomberg News, New York Post, and Daily News editorial boards, writing about New York and national issues for more than 2 decades. He's been a guest on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, and regularly appears on other local and national political affairs programs. He's the co-founder of the electoral dysfunction. Talk about dysfunction. He's the co-founder of the Electoral Dysfunction podcast and produces stand-up shows in New York as part of Comedy Leopard. He was born in Trinidad and lives in the United Kingdom and lived in the United Kingdom before moving to the United States. He's a graduate of St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland. You guys, give it up for Robert A. George. Well, done a lot.
I could say I've done a few things. Yeah, and
No wonder
I'm
you have such great political material on stage.
well. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, 2/3 of my well, let's put it this way. Going back, I guess you could say I've had two full careers which overlap and complement one another, but they're very distinct. The first 10 years post college were in the political world. I was working in Washington, D.C., worked on Capitol Hill, worked for members of Congress, and so forth. And then I then transitioned from there into first becoming a member of the New York Post editorial board. That was in 1999, and did that for 16 years, and then Daily News, and then Bloomberg, and so on and so forth. But yeah, all of that exposed me to the world of politics and the world of policy and things like that. And so it's not unusual. I mean, you know this. They tell us if we're going to do stand up, talk about what we know, and so I talk about what I know, and I also talk about, and this comes across in your stand up as well. You Comedy is about embracing the absurdity and contradictions in life, upending expectations. And so, yeah, I'm Catholic. I'm West Indian. I'm West Indian, and so I'm an immigrant, and I have these observations. And broadly speaking, I'm a Black American, African American, however you want to talk about it. And so you always have those tensions going on in this society. I'm gay as well, even though it took me years and years to like recognize that and accept myself that way as well. But also, my politics are complicated. I worked for the Republican National Committee. I worked for the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And society keeps whispering in our ears that, and you talk about this a lot as having been a woman in the military and so forth. you know Society keeps telling you, when you get into a certain place in your life, it says, oh, you're not supposed to be doing this, you're not supposed to be there, you're not supposed to be thinking this way. And you get to a point you say, F that. I am who I am. I've made these choices and I believe these things. And this is America. Who are you to tell me I shouldn't be here and shouldn't be thinking about these things in a certain way? And, it took me a little while, but I suddenly realized, yeah, stand up is a very nice way to try to explore these kind of tensions before you go. And it's a lot cheaper than spending money on the shrinks and stuff. Though I do spend money on the shrinks.
Me too. Well, I was just kind of curious, in this PC world where everybody's getting offended over the kind of coffee cup you drink from, like, what is it that got into you that you are unabashed, unrelentless, in a good way. You are convicted of what you're saying and you don't care who likes it. And I love that about you. So how did you get so courageous?
I that's a good question. In certain ways, I sort of kind of just I kind of stumbled into it. I My mom had a great role in that, for good or for ill, for different for different reasons. Uh, uh, I mean, I was predominantly raised by her. She was a nurse, and it was the two of us for a large segment of my first 10 years or so. And that was when we went from Trinidad to England, and then to New York. uh and yeah, and she was kind of fearless in that way, as well. I mean, single mom, she was confident enough to pick herself up and say, okay, I'm going to move to England for a job opportunity as a nurse. I'm going to move to the States, because they're advertising for nurses over here. And so, you kind of see that, oh yeah, she's kind of fearless. I was nowhere near as fearless as she was. But the other point is, though, it's you sort of stumble into things that kind of interest you. When I was living in when I was in Maryland and DC, working in the political world, uh, something I picked up in college was that I was a good DJ. And so my side hustle when I was working on the Hill in this conservative environment, working for Republican members of Congress and so forth, I was also working in bars and clubs, and in DC, and I was picking up some other money from doing wedding receptions and other parties, and so forth. And so I embraced the contradiction of having a conservative, professional, business type of life in the day job, and working to get people dancing on the dance floor in the evenings. And I would have these interesting conversations in both places where uh, I'm at work and they say, "Oh, Robert, what are you doing this weekend?" It says, "Oh, yeah, well, I'm DJing at the I'm such and such bar downtown, or I'm over here, or I'm throwing a wedding reception this weekend." I said, "What? Wait, seriously, you do that? Huh? That's interesting." But then at the bar, I might be talking to the bartender or one of the servers, and they say, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do during the week?" And it says, "Oh, I work on Capitol Hill for Newt Gingrich, the Speaker of the House." And they think, "Wait, what?" So, but I embraced that contradiction. When I moved up here to join the Post, I realized I missed doing the DJing thing, but it's a little bit harder to break into that up here in New York, just because it's just so much competition. So a friend of mine mentioned that she did improv, and I went to one of her shows, and I said, "Oh wow, this looks like a lot of fun." And so improv became my creative outlet for like the next 20 years or so. And then finally we got around, the pandemic hit, and I realized that there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to say to talk about the pandemic and talk about protests and all this other kind of stuff. And I had dabbled in stand up a little bit in like the early 2000s. That was actually where I first met Gladys Simon. There was a contest going on called Funniest Reporter in New York, and I entered that, and I was paired with Gladys as my mentor, and so I started dabbling in that for just a few years, and then I put that aside to focus more on the improv. But again, as I said, the pandemic rolled around, and like a lot of people, I decided to lean into my creative pursuits again, and I realized that yeah, let's commit to it a little bit more this time. And so I took a couple of classes, became friends with some of the people that I was taking classes with, and we started producing some shows.
Fabulous. You know that we have a gentleman that went through comic strip getting past, Vince August. And do you know the name?
That name sounds kind of familiar, but I'm not quite. Does he live here or did he move out of town? I don't
He
remember.
moved out he moved out of town and he was always a judge, but he would do outrageous. When I first came to comic strip like 9 years ago at the beginning of my career, 9 or 10 years ago, he was being outrageous with the audience and then going and being a very straight-laced judge. And his outrageousness on stage and his opinions and his outspokenness got him banned from being a judge.
Oh.
And so how has that ever, have you ever had repercussions for what you do on stage with your freedom of speech in America?
Uh, so far, well, that's a good question. Since I'm not exactly a working journalist right now, maybe I have had some repercussions. I'm not sure. I mean, I can't say for sure. I mean, uh, there have been times where uh, when I was working as a journalist, like say at the Post or something like that, uh, and I also had a private blog of my own, and I wrote something on the blog that my boss felt didn't quite toe the party line, and so or I made a TV appearance. They got people kind of all kinds of nervous and so forth. Uh, but yeah, I'm uh, for the most part, I'm fairly upfront with the people I work with. That I've gotten to a place in my life where I'm something of a known quantity. People know that oh, it's Robert George. He sometimes pops up on the local New York One. No, it's Robert George from the Post and the News and so forth. So it's kind of known. It's kind of known now. And I also I don't self-censor myself, but and this is something I think any good comedian should do, is you self-edit yourself. You don't censor, but you edit, which means you are careful about your word choices and so forth. And it doesn't mean that you're going to go out of your way not to offend, but you are going to go out of your way to make sure that the setup and the punchline is the best and the funniest way, the funniest that it can be. And I mean, and I think that's what we all that's what we all strive for. Sometimes sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you cross that line. But you should be aware that there is a line, and you just in the same way as a journalist, your goal is to address the truth whether somebody gets offended or not. In stand up, your goal is to be funny and get people laughing, whether others are offended or not.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you know, you say that you were born in Trinidad, and I've never been there, and I assume a lot of people that will watch this have never been to Trinidad. So, at what age did you leave Trinidad for the United Kingdom and eventually America? What ages were those blocks?
Uh, Okay, so yeah, so I was very young when I left Trinidad. I was a year old, right?
Wow.
And then we moved to England, and then moved to the States when I was 8, and came to New York, and lived in New York for a couple of years, and then moved to Connecticut for a couple of years, then out to California, and then back to New York where to finish up high school, Westchester County. So that was the very brief snapshot of my movements as a kid, around the world and around the country.
That, you know, I loved the part of what you said so far. The part that I endeared me to you the most was that your mother was a single mother, and that whenever she saw that there was a better job opportunity as a nurse, she picked up and took you there. And you know, I was a single mom. I think my daughter might have gone to 20 different schools by the time she graduated, and I so identify with that. But you know, that gutsiness that she had, I think it's really rubbed off on you, hasn't it?
Uh, to an extent, I think you are correct in terms of what I opt to do, in my side career and my side hustles and things like that. Um, I think though for other reasons, I am. I think I've been, and this is to my detriment, this is something I've worked out. I've been working on through therapy for like the last 20 years or so. Uh, I've probably been a little bit more cautious, or little c conservative in my professional development. I think, yeah, I think my mother, I don't know whether she necessarily thought about, oh, step one, step two, step three, or whether she just decided, oh, this is here. Let's let's jump for it. I for various reasons I've been a little bit more cautious, and I don't know, that may or may not have had impact on my professional opportunities. I can't say that uh, I can't I can't say that I'm totally upset with how things have worked out. But there's always that, was it Robert Frost, the road not taken? The also known as the woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Now, whatever made you give a darn about political things?
Well, that's something that I have been. Politics has been part of my DNA, from an early age. I can remember coming home from school, and the Watergate hearings, were going on, and I'm just like thinking, all these people, these, well, it was almost exclusively men at the time, but all these men on the screen, and they're talking about this guy Nixon, and somebody's psychiatrist over here, and this Watergate stuff, and da 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 da. And I was just kind of compelled. I was also compelled by it, but also, and this is appropriate, given what we've been talking about as well. I was also a fan of Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show. and I would ask to stay. I would often ask to stay up late to hear his monologue, and uh, and it's appropriate we kind of talk about this now because there's a lot of controversy going on with Stephen Colbert and all this other kind of stuff. Um, uh, Johnny Carson managed to about topical events without being explicitly political in terms of how he felt on a given topic. If a politician, if there was a scandal going on, he would be able to throw in on it and find the funny in there. But and obviously with something as big as Watergate, and you're hearing all these revelations about missing minutes and all this other kind of stuff. There's a political element there, but he's not lean. He didn't lean into it from an ideological point of view. He was just kind of showing, saying this is what's going on, and this is why all of this is very funny. But that combination, me coming home, watching the politics of the day unfold and then also watching how comedians talk about it in the evening, it just it stayed within my head. Later on, obviously, Saturday Night Live starts up, and you've got Weekend Update with Chevy Chase and Jane Curtin and Bill Murray and so forth, and that fusion of political talk with political humor was just stuck with me for quite a while. And then I stumbled into politics right after in terms of working in politics right after college. I was living in Annapolis after I'd graduated, and a couple moved in next door to me in this, post-college group house that I was living in, and I became friends with the husband there, and he was involved in politics and the Republican Party actually like in DC in the Republican National Committee headquarters, and we became friends, and I volunteered at a convention, and then the next thing I know, I'm in the political world and off to the races.
I love that. So when it comes to politics and comedy, I usually tune out when anybody starts in with politics, but I tune in when you do because you go on stage like you did last night and you related to everybody in the room based on what you sat and listened to about their comedy. So you brought everybody on board with you, and then you went into comedy, and there's something really special about your political comedy. It's not, look how smart I am and I know things you folks don't know. You don't go politics over people's head like Bill Maher goes over my head, and half the room tunes out and half the room is cheering. You have a way of doing such great premises that no matter where I lean politically, which I don't really care about politics at all, and you haven't gotten me to care about politics, but I care about you and I care about what you're doing, and I see the brilliance of what you're doing is so much better because you go in and you capture our attention in a personal way, and then you go in a everybody can understand this. I'm not trying to do TED Talk and talk over your head. This is stuff you got to know. And you go in with knowledge and respect for the audience. I just love the way you are on stage.
You no, you're very, very kind. Well, one of the things when I first stepped on stage to do stand up, and that was in 2000. And as I'd said, I had done improv before, and I just happened to I'd run into a person who was running his own stand-up show, stand-up mic down on the Lower East Side. he actually first ran into me randomly because I was doing a CNN stand-up, not stand-up as in comedy, but a what they call a stand-up commentary piece in the middle of a restaurant I think it was right before the 2000 election. It's hard to remember now, but uh, this guy who had this mic, we became friends. I invited him to one of my improv shows, and he said, "Oh, well, come down to our come down to our show on the Lower East Side in the back of a Two Boots, and if you've got if you think you've got 6 or 7 minutes, let's see if you can do some stand up." So I did do some stand up, and what I learned then, and this is before I'd taken any classes or anything like that, I realized that the key to getting the audience to listen to you is to put yourself in a position of vulnerability, to so that the audience knows who you are and where you're coming from. And if you do that, they're willing to go on the ride that you want to
Wow.
take them on. So I think one of the earliest jokes that I ever did, and I still do a variation of it today, is that was hi, I'm Robert George. I'm a Catholic, West Indian, Black Republican. Anybody else here? And so people are just like, just laugh at and then but by doing that, I can then it gives me permission to talk about make jokes about Catholicism and my connection to that. It's I can make jokes about being West Indian, it's Trinidad versus Trinidad versus Jamaica, being black and so forth. And then boom, the kind of the Republican part. I can any one of I have identified my various identities, and I can then use those as jumping off points to make various other observations. And by embracing all of my identities and my contradictions, I give the audience permission to say, "Oh, oh, I see where he's coming from here. Oh, I can see that. Oh, I can see that. I can see that tension, and so forth and so forth." And that's I mean, I think that's the rather than saying, "Oh, I'm this I'm this well-educated guy here, and let me tell you why you're kind of stupid to think this way and that way and so forth." Instead, I'm just saying, "Hey, this is where I am. You know where you know where I'm coming from. You might see some similarities in your own experience, or maybe you don't. Who knows?" Uh, and that seems to be often the best way. And to your other point as well, one thing that has become, I guess, sort of my favorite gimmick, and I did it a little bit yesterday at Gladys's. Um, uh, my other identity, which we talked about a lot at the top, is as a journalist, and I play the journalist comedian on stage when I get on there. So my first minute and a half, I will take out my notepad and see and share with the audience some other lines that they've heard from the comics that preceded them. So I put little tags on them, not to steal their thunder, but in a sense to celebrate the people who've come before. But the audience likes that as well because they realize that I'm giving them something that's it's not just something that I've rehearsed a million times, but I'm also, in a sense, telling them that I've seen the same thing that they've seen, but here's another fun way. Here's another little fun way to look at it. So I credit, by the way, my many years in improv from being able to do that, which is about listening, and in a sense, I am yes anding the comedians that came on stage before me.
It's so beautiful. And it's such a great way for the audience to get to know you and like you before you go into your strong political material point of view. Such a great segue.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. So they get an idea that I'm not taking myself too seriously. I have a sense of camaraderie with the other comics, and I'm there to make people feel comfortable and have fun.
Yes, and everybody loves you. I've never heard in all the times I've been in New York on little trips and living here, nobody has ever said, I can't stand Robert. Nobody has ever said that. Kudos to you on that one. So
Well,
behind
yeah.
you, earlier before we went live, you held up a book of one of my favorite comedian actors, Richard Pryor. Can you show me that again?
Yeah, actually, it's not a book. It's a collection of all of his comedy albums. It's a CD, yeah, CD collection, which includes that N words crazy and bicentennial N word, and some of his other live on the sunset live on the Sunset Strip. I remember, I think it was my freshman year in college, going to see that in a movie theater, and that was when he shared about his addiction, and it was his comeback concert after he had basically set himself on fire freebasing. And I mean, talk about being raw and putting your uh put being raw. No offense to Eddie Murphy stealing his stealing his stealing his concert, but yeah. So Richard Pryor is one of the people on the Mount Rushmore, the Mount Rushmore of stand up. So yeah.
Last night, when you were at Comic Strip Live in Gladys Simon's room, you talked about knowing his son, Richard Pryor Jr. Is there anything of that you wanted to say here, or just that you knew him?
Oh, actually, no. Actually, that was I think it was Hakeem who knew Richard Pryor. I
Oh,
think it was yeah, Hakeem who knew Richard Pryor's son. I have not met anybody with Richard Pryor. I have met in a social setting Chris Rock. Because a good friend of mine, a guy by the name of Bill Stepney, who was one of the behind the scenes creators of Public Enemy. He grew up in Brooklyn and was part of that era of black creatives in Brooklyn, which included Chris Rock, and Spike Lee, and so forth. And so probably about 20 years or so ago, we all went out, happened to go out to dinner, and we had actually gone out to a movie, and then we said, oh, let's get together, let's go out and get some dinner, and we all ended up meeting up with Chris Rock, and I'm thinking, oh, Chris Rock is right across is right across the table with me, and he's a bit basic, kind of down to earth guy, and so forth. But yeah, so I'm not tight, unfortunately, with anybody in the Richard Pryor family, but yeah, seeing Chris Rock, and being part of, I mean, I think you probably have felt this as well, being part of we may not be getting to the level of your Chris Rocks and your Gaffigans and your Seinfelds and things like that, but it's a real honor to be able to, even in a small way, be performing in a semi-regular basis on the very stages that they've graced, and we may be, six six or seven. Well, actually, given our connection with Gladys Simon, we are literally, one or two steps away from Jim Gaffigan, because she helped mentor him, 25 years or so ago. So yeah, it's uh stand up is an interesting collegial and familial um, uh, universe environment to be in. And when I say familial, I mean that in the best and worst senses of the word, because just as there are members of your own family you can't stand, there are some comics some comics you embrace and others you well, okay, you're good. You just stay right over there.
Totally.
But I am glad it is it, I'm it is very, it's a nice blessing for you to say that you haven't met anybody that says that, oh, I can't stand Robert George. Give it time. You'll find somebody.
No, I don't think so. Who's your favorite political comedian?
Um, okay, well, I mentioned Chris Rock. I mean his Bring the Pain concert and CD from, what was it, 95 or 96, is one of the absolute classics that's out there. Um, Going back a little bit further, obviously, from people from our generation, or the generation previous to us, George Carlin is up there. We mentioned Richard Pryor, though. In fairness, Richard Pryor, I think, was more uh, of a social commentator than a political comedian. And there's an important distinction to be made there, I think. In terms of contemporary people, Bill Burr is up there. Um, a slightly younger generation, people uh, like Mark Normand and Sam Morril, because they're not necessarily explicitly purely political, but they are not afraid, almost as I said before, like Johnny Carson, about bringing the current headlines into their act, and making and commenting on the absurdity of the situation, rather than making uh, an ideological, rather than going for an ideological punchline, they go for a social commentary punchline, which I think is actually much better. Not just because you should be cautious about offending half your audience or anything like that. I just think it ends up being funnier if you're able to encourage the audience to laugh at the broad situation, rather than making it about an individual or a party.
I love that. That's beautiful. So, what's your end goal in your life? What do you have to, you've accomplished so much, but what would you like to still accomplish before the good Lord takes you home? to that Trinidad in the sky?
Well, that is a very good question, and it's one that I have been pondering over the last couple of years, and I haven't completely, I'm getting close to it, but I haven't completely resolved that as of yet, because uh, 2023 was probably my darkest period. I lost my job in literally in in the space of 2.5 months. I lost my job. My mom passed, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that was like thinking of, I think the universe might be telling me something, it's telling me something here. So, you diagnosis, and then you have to go through the surgery, and then the chemo and the radiation and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
Wow.
And so I I ended up taking off basically most of 2024 from that, and good section of this year as well. And so thinking, oh yeah, what what I'm relatively speaking healthy enough, knock wood, to so that oh, I've got another act or two within me, and sure, part of that is going to be trying to expand this stand up stuff, but I'm also trying to improve myself by taking getting more opportunities to do public speaking, and as other people have told me many times over the years, there is a book in me at some place, and now, you know literally, if not now, when? Because as you said, uh, while there are in my head um, another act or two in front of me, the fact is, and we all know this, there are probably probably um, more months behind me than there are months in front of me. So, from a journalistic standpoint, uh, there is a deadline that I am facing. I don't know what it is. Only the guy upstairs knows that. So I probably should get to work on the first draft.
And that's amazing. I can't wait to see that. And then we'll have to come on here and see your book, all your books lined up across there. Thank you
There you
so
go.
much
There
for
you go.
coming. Thank you, Robert George, for coming on and especially for putting on your good shirt.
Well, one of the things I like to be introduced as when I had to at least have put on the good shirt.
Where would you like people to follow you and help your career? And how can we help your career?
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So you can follow me on Robert George Comedy. You can also follow me at Comedy Leopard. Those are both my Instagrams. On Twitter/X, I'm at Rob George, and I'm also findable on Substack at the Pun Stack. So
No
there you
way.
go.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even talk about how you love puns.
I am the I am the I am the pun guy, and gosh, I don't know whether is I'm not even sure it's possible for me to be able to. Can I pun on can I pun on command right now? This is a I've got so much I've got so much pressure here. So
That's such a
I'm not
like
sure if I can come up. I'm not sure if if there's a joke I can come up with on demand that would make sense right now. So so there you go. So there you go.
are you into music?
Oh well, not as much as I was in the past. As I said, I was a DJ back in the 90s and and so forth.
Because I
And
was
I
just thinking you should get your nickel
still,
back.
oh, very good. Oh, okay. I, I will hold no quarter on that regard. I don't know how much time do we have left here now, Linda?
I'd like you to wrap it up. You started it by talking about everything behind you, and I'd like you to wrap up with any thought you'd like to leave comedians who are coming in behind you or audiences who are becoming baffled by what's going on in comedy and how to stay calm in a crazy world. Anything you want to end this on, and then I'll say
Well,
goodbye.
um, one thing, as I said, I jumped back into this in around the spring or the fall of 2021, which was, in the middle of the pandemic, and it was a very complicated difficult time. One thing I do think I've noticed in the last 4 years is that again, I don't like to get into the pure political babble and rhetoric and things like that. But I do think in 2021 or so, comedians felt a little bit reluctant about what they should and shouldn't be able to say on stage. If you want to say it was because it was too woke, or however you want to phrase it, I think people felt a little bit hesitant. I think that has sort of fallen by the wayside. I think people are a little bit more confident in being able to stand in their truth. I think that's important. If I'm telling young comics is to lean into your contradictions. Don't be completely and totally self-assured. Recognize that you encompass multiple identities and experiences, and explore those. You're not just a generic white guy. You're not just a generic white chick or black guy or whatever. There's a lot of things that make you what you are, and the more that you can expose and share of that on stage, the more audiences will embrace you.
Wow, what an encouraging statement to end on. Thank you, Robert George, for this precious time and have a great day. You guys, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Linda. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you so
See
much.
you. Bye. Figure out how to get out of here. Bye.
Bye.